Next in.
Hey, I'm Wes with Next In, and I'm on today with Louis Rosenberg. Louis, how are you?
I'm great.
Awesome. Louis, do you want to just tell everyone listening kind of like who you are real quick, and then we'll just go right into it.
Sure. So my name is Louis Rosenberg. I am currently the CEO of a company called Unanimous A.I. Out here in California. But the relevant background that I think is most interesting for this discussion is my experience in the metaverse, which I've been working in and around for the last 30 years. So just a quick background: I actually got involved in the metaverse over 30 years ago, back at the early beginning. I started as a researcher at Stanford and NASA, working on early vision systems, modeling some of the basic parameters, and I was immediately convinced that one day this technology would significantly impact society. To be honest, I thought it would happen sooner than 30 years, but I was immediately convinced, and I was fortunate enough to go from NASA to get a funding at the U.S. Air Force to do further research and develop what became the first real augmented reality system, which I think it will be an important part of the metaverse as well. Augmented reality. So I did that, and again I was convinced that one day this would really impact the world. So in 1993, I founded a virtual reality company called Immersion Corporation, which was one of the early VR companies in Silicon Valley. And I expected that within 6-7 years, virtual reality would be everywhere. It has taken longer than that, but Immersion was successful. We took the company public in '99. Company is still around today. It's going to be 30 years old next year. I left in 2002 and founded an augmented reality company and worked on geospatial technologies, which are also going to be really important to the metaverse. And that was acquired by Google in 2011. And then I founded my current company, Unanimous A.I, which is an artificial intelligence company that focuses on connecting groups of people together in shared environments, and I do think AI will also be very important to the metaverse. So, yeah. I've seen the industry evolve. I've seen big waves of hype followed by cold winters. I think it's real this time. I think this time we really are very close to the metaverse being a significant technology that impacts society on a large scale.
Yeah, for sure. Man, and really quickly, I believe Unanimous has gotten a lot of publicity for sports predictions, right?
Yeah, so Unanimous AI, we're really different and unique kind of AI company. Instead of, most AI companies focus on replacing people with algorithms. There's some places where that works really well and adds efficiency. At Unanimous, we do something really different, which is we use AI to connect groups of people together and amplify their combined intelligence. And when we do that, we can get significantly more accurate forecasts and predictions and assessments. Yeah. And our technology is actually called Swarm, because it's modeled on the biological principle of swarm intelligence, which is the reason why birds flock and fish school and bees swarm. They are smarter together in groups than as individuals. And so our premise 8 years ago when we founded the company was, hey, if birds and bees and fish can get so much smarter by working together in these real-time systems, maybe people can get smarter. And we started building it and connecting groups of people together, and it works. It makes groups smarter. And we got into sports kind of by accident, which is we were looking for something that we could use to test our technology in a rigorous way, where we could make predictions, every day, every week, and get results very quickly. And sports is perfect for that. And so we started getting groups of regular sports fans together and getting them into our platform called Swarm, and making predictions. And we did this for research purposes. We did a big study with Oxford University predicting English Premier League soccer. And so we
Nice.
had groups of people come in and predict soccer, 50 consecutive games. And as individuals, they were like 55% accurate, but when they worked together as a swarm, we got them up to 75% accurate in predicting the outcome of these games. Which,
Yeah.
and that's the type of amplification we saw. And so, back years ago, we would just post our predictions for football and baseball and soccer on our website as we were collecting data for research, and then we had the data we needed, and we stopped, and we started getting all these emails saying, like, well, why did you stop? Like, we'll pay for it. And so we spun off a subsidiary called Sports Picker AI, and Sports Picker actually generates sports forecasts. We'll do the entire NFL season, every single game this NFL season. We're doing baseball right now. We'll do the full baseball season through the playoffs. We do soccer, and we generally beat the Vegas odds makers.
Wow.
Of course, that's a side business. Our main business is large corporations use Swarm to make better sales forecasts, marketing forecasts. Hedge funds use it to predict equities. We've done studies. We did a study with MIT where groups of traders predicted the price of gold and the price of oil and amplified their intelligence by about 30%. And so it's really a technology where we take groups of people and we make them smarter. And it's really about leveraging their knowledge and wisdom and insight as opposed to replacing them.
Yeah, and that's encouraging to hear, because I think if you listen to some have kind of a doomsday mindset when it comes to technology. It's like, eventually everything's going to be replaced and no one's going to have a job. So it's cool to know that there are people that are on the cutting edge of technology that don't view it as a human replacement, but as a help.
Right. And I think that's the right approach to AI. I mean, there's a lot of work that's going on to replace people with AI, and there's all kinds of dangers associated with that. And also, I think part of it is that people don't appreciate human knowledge, human wisdom, human intuition. And I'll give you an example. Like in the world of sales forecasting, we work with a lot of big brands, Fortune 500 companies, and they'll come to us and they'll say, yeah, we try to use traditional machine learning to predict sales. And traditional machine learning, what it does is you look at data from previous periods, right, and you process it, and then you can make a forecast about the future. And so we work with one very large retailer where they were looking at their sale of their holiday products. These were sweaters and clothing, and they processed the data from the previous holiday season. And then they tried to predict how their results would be in the new holiday season with new products. And their results were poor. And they said, well, why doesn't it work? I said, well, what you did was you made a really good prediction about how your new products would have done last year because that's the data that you had. Whereas the thing about Swarm is we're not using historical data. We're using the data in people's heads. If you have a team of sales forecasters or a team of retailers or even a group of customers, to bring them into Swarm, they have a sense of what's trendy this season. They have a sense of what the economy is like this season. They have a sense of what retail is like. So it's a database, but it's inside their head. They come into Swarm, they combine their knowledge and wisdom and insight, and they make very accurate forecasts about how those products will do this season. And so it's about respecting the fact that people are smart and knowledge and wisdom and intuition is real. And we can use AI to amplify that. And it's actually more accurate than using historical data in a lot of contexts, because for some things, historical data just is out of date almost immediately.
Yeah. I love how you said that. It was so subtle, but you said you were trying to forecast what your new products would have done last year.
Right.
It's a whole different product.
Right. And that product might have done well last year, right, but the market conditions are different. Consumer sentiment's different, style is different, economy is different. And so it's, and we see that when people are trying to predict equities, trying to predict, commodities. We work with commodities traders come together and they'll predict the price of corn.
Right.
And they can't use historical data. There wasn't a war in Ukraine in their historical data.
Right.
And so historical data leads a lot of companies astray because they forget that it becomes out of date very, very quickly. But people are continually updating the data in their heads, and we can use that.
So it's kind of like using AI, the traditional way where you feed the model with past data versus almost feeding the model with present data.
So it's absolutely. I mean, what we do is, in Swarm, groups of people come in, and it's a real time, and so they have an interface, and it actually looks like a school of fish. They each have this interesting interface, and questions pop up on their screen, and then they work together to answer the question while AI algorithms are watching all of their input. And so our algorithms are trained on how people interact. Doesn't matter what the question is. The question could be about the price of oil, or it could be, how many cases of Red Bull will sell in a certain region, right? It could be anything. But the issue is that people have some level of knowledge, and on our AI is able to watch how they're interacting and find and help them reach the best combination of their knowledge and wisdom and insights. And it works. And again, it's based on how biological systems do this. And to kind of make that clear, if you think of like a school of fish, a school of fish has thousands of individuals, and each one has a slightly different view of their world. Each one has slightly different, historical experiences, slightly different even personality, and nobody's in charge. And yet, by working together as a system, they can navigate the ocean and make decisions and survive as a species for hundreds of millions of years. And they do it by forming these real-time systems where the individuals are pushing and pulling on each other based on their different levels of confidence. And we do that online. We allow groups of people who can connect from anywhere in the world, come together online, use our interface that allows them to kind of behave like a school of fish. And the AI algorithm guides them to the answers that leverage their knowledge and wisdom, insight. And so, we've worked with companies where they'll bring in their groups of their customers to give them insight on, will this advertisement resonate with people? We've worked with companies will bring in groups of their sales associates to make sales forecasts. One of our customers is actually the United Nations. They have a group of people that make forecasts about famines around the world.
Oh, wow.
And so they'll bring in 20 experts from different all around the world who have different expertise in climate and economy and politics. And then they'll make a forecast. What's the probability that there'll be a famine in Haiti over the next 18 months? And they can do that quickly and get insights. And so it's about, what they have is a group of people who have this real-time knowledge rather than having this big database of historical. There's not a big database of historical data they can leverage, but there are people with knowledge and wisdom and insight. And so it works, and it works well. And again, we do it for sports through our sports picker AI, or we do it for, predicting famines. I mean, it works for anything.
that is incredibly cool. That is incredibly cool and encouraging because, I think that people matter, right? And so anytime I hear someone advancing technology to help people versus to eliminate the need for people, it's like, I think I like that a lot. So if you don't mind, I'd love to go back, right? So 91, VR researcher, NASA, in 91, what was the original thought behind the application of VR for NASA or even the Air Force? What was the original impetus there?
Right. So my original interest in the technology space was really pretty basic, which is that, virtual reality and augmented reality have the same benefit, which it's about presenting information to people in a natural way, presenting information to people in the format and the form that our perceptual system is designed to perceive it. We're not like, I like to tell people, 10 years from now, we'll look back at the time when people walk down the street staring at information on their phone with their necks bent,
right.
Bumping into things, and say that's silly, because that's, what augmented reality will do is it will just put information everywhere. You'll walk down the street and that information will be all around you, and you'll be able to see things, and that content will be presented in the way we were meant to perceive it. And so that's really at the highest level, the fundamental benefit of virtual reality and augmented reality is it puts content in the place that we're meant to see it. In terms of the applications, going back, the earliest applications that I got involved in for actual consumer markets was looking at using virtual reality for medical training. And the reason we went for medical training was because the technology was expensive back then, right? You had to use very expensive computers, graphics workstations, the headsets were expensive. And so the type of applications that people could afford were high end. And so my company that I founded in 1993, Immersion Corporation, one of the first things we focused on was building simulators that would allow medical schools to train surgeons to perform laparoscopic surgery, endoscopic surgery, colonoscopy, bronchoscopy in virtual reality, where they could make a mistake and not hurt anybody, where if they made an error, it would be tracked. And so all the things that really give you the benefit of learning the procedure, you could now do in virtual reality and in a safe, calm environment. And that that was one of the first places. And we built simulators. We were selling simulators to medical schools starting in 1995, 1996, and continued selling simulators for decades for training doctors.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I think so often when the masses of folks in society think about VR, they think about video games and headsets. And I think the real value in VR and AR specifically is things just like that. A law enforcement officer can train in an environment where the risk is essentially gone. A surgeon can train in an environment where you're not experimenting on a live person, right? I think that's huge. Do you see augmented reality and virtual reality at odds with one another at all in terms of?
They're not at odds, but they are different. And I say that because people talk about the metaverse, and
right.
And everyone has a different definition of metaverse. I like to actually keep it very, very simple. And to me, the metaverse is this transition from a world where most of the content, digital content we interact with, is flat media on flat screens, to a world where most of the content we're going to interact with will be immersive experiences that are all around us. And that could be completely virtual. I would call that the virtual metaverse, where you're in a simulated world and there are avatars, and it's what a lot of people think of when you say the word metaverse. Right. And then there will also be the augmented metaverse, where you're wearing lightweight glasses and the virtual content is just placed all around you in your natural daily life, embellishing the world with artistic content, informational content, educational content, and those will evolve in parallel. They're not at odds with each other, but they're coming from different markets. Meaning, the purely virtual worlds it's evolving out of the gaming industry, and it's evolving out of the social media industry. And so, social media companies, obviously, Facebook, now Meta, is really a big proponent of these virtual worlds where people can socialize and where people can have entertainment experiences, and people can have shopping experiences, and that will evolve. At the same time, The augmented metaverse is really evolving out of the mobile phone industry, where right now, you get digital content through your lives, mobile media on these little flat screens, and that will evolve into lightweight eyewear, stylish eyewear that puts all that information in the places that it's most useful, and allows you to actually see the world and not stare down at a screen. Right. And I think that they'll evolve in separate ways with different business models and different major players in the augmented metaverse. I think Apple and Google and Microsoft and Samsung will be major players in the virtual metaverse. There might be some similar players, but also Facebook and now Meta and other social media style platforms will evolve. My personal feeling is that the virtual metaverse will be the type of thing that people do for short periods of time, right? Entertainment experiences, whether it's gaming or watching sports in VR or shopping in VR, but things that people will do for a few hours. And I say that because people don't like to be cut off from the real world, right, for extended periods. They just like a couple hours, and you feel isolated, you feel cut off from the world. On the other hand, the augmented metaverse, that's replacing your phone, which most people keep with them from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep. It doesn't cut you off from the world, and it will impact everything from how shopping experiences, what it's like when you're walking down the street, what it's like when you're out anywhere. It can influence your whole world, putting interesting content around. And so I do think that the augmented metaverse will be the thing that actually influences society in a bigger way. And I think that these will evolve in parallel. In terms of timing, I think that they're both in a rapid acceleration stage right now. Lots of hiring in both spaces. I think the virtual metaverse has a little bit more momentum behind it now, but it will actually be moving slower than the augmented metaverse, where, in my mind, as soon as the first major player has consumer level AR glasses, especially Apple, that will drive adoption very, very quickly. Right. Because, and you can almost think of it like the shift from flip phones to smartphones. In 2008, nobody knew they needed a smartphone, and they thought phones were for having conversations. And then Apple launches an iPhone, and people realize, they'll spend $1,000 for a phone, and the adoption, started out at not a crazy pace, but people started to, eventually started to feel like if you didn't have a smartphone, you were missing out on content, you're missing out on information, you actually are at a disadvantage. And I think that augmented reality will be the same way. That when people are wearing augmented reality glasses, and there's content all around when you're walking down the street, and app developers creating all kinds of interesting things, artistic content, if you don't have that, you'll feel like you're at a disadvantage. And so there'll be this pressure to adopt the technology. And so I think that in the augmented reality space is a potential really for rapid adoption, where over just 5 or 6 year period, we could see a very large percentage of the basically mobile phone market transition to augmented reality.
Yeah, I think, just anecdotally, like, I think I can already see that, right? Because especially for gaming, so, half of our recruiting agency is focused on gaming exclusively. A lot of them are big time gamers. Of all of the recruiters we have here, VR headsets have been available now for a while. We only have one recruiter who actually has a VR headset and plays in VR. Right. And I think some of it's like what you're talking about. Like, me personally, like, I love the idea of augmented reality. I love the idea that I can put something on and look at something and get information. That, to me, that's very valuable. But then, you see someone playing a game in a headset, and it even looks kind of goofy, right? Like, they're in the room with you, but they're not in the room with you, right?
No, it is. I do think that that's a barrier. I think that the purely virtual worlds again, it will grow, it will be adopted. I think it will be adopted, that will be more Gen Z focused and gamer
Right.
focused. And um, whereas again, augmented reality, that will impact everyone pretty quickly, especially if it's done right. If a company like Apple or Google makes a product that really, looks like, just looks like glasses, and is doesn't create any kind of social stigma.
Right.
Like, I mean, Google kind of had a false step with Google Glass, which wasn't really even augmented reality, but it also had, with social adoption had a barrier. I think that this time around, Apple and Google and Snap is working on it, and there's quite a few companies working on these augmented reality glasses. I think that they're working hard to avoid any type of social stigma,
Right.
and have something that is just looks natural, looks stylish, and gets adopted quickly because it's providing value.
Right. Do you see, so there's a lot of different companies working on AR glasses. Do you see it being like, if you could rewind the clock on streaming, it was like basically Netflix went from DVD to streaming, and they were kind of the only show in town. And now it's like, there's all these reports about how people are inundated with the amount of streaming services I can choose from. And you kind of have the ones that are going to survive and ones that we've already seen pop up and go away. You kind of see AR being the same way. Like there's going to be some.
So I see VR as being the same way, because there's a
Okay.
lot of people creating VR worlds, and I think some will survive and some will disappear. And it's a little bit dangerous because there's a lot of these VR worlds people are creating now. They're selling real estate in those worlds with
Yeah.
NFTs, and most of that will be worthless because they'll go away. In the AR world, because it's evolving out of the phone industry, there's really just a few players that can really push
Right.
product in a large scale. I mean, it will be Apple, it will be Google,
Samsung.
it will be Samsung. I mean, the smallest player that could be successful is maybe Snap, and they're a pretty big company,
Right.
just because they've made the decision to really make AR a priority for their company. But it's because it requires the same kind of infrastructure as the phone industry. It is unlikely that you'll have lots of small players that just disappear. I mean, that said, there will be players that aren't successful, just like in the phone space. But I think it'll be a battle of large companies, whereas VR worlds will be a battle of some massive companies like Meta and other upstart companies that are creating things from scratch.
Right.
And I think most of those will go away.
Yeah, you hit on, you're talking about buying digital real estate. That the NFT conversation is a very divisive topic in this office. We have a couple folks that are all in and they're buying them, and there's a couple folks I think I would be on this side that think, hey, I would spend my money on something else. but yeah, what do you think about NFTs? I know that's not where we plan to go, but just out of curiosity.
I think that I think NFTs are an interesting technology. I think that the first place that they got used was really for selling artwork, and so in a lot of people's mind, NFT equals artwork. It's really not.
Right.
But the artwork NFT craze became a bubble, and so it's kind of gotten a little bit ridiculous, where people are spending massive amounts for pieces of art as NFTs. I think there'll be a big shakeout. Some of that will survive, but most of it will become worthless. But it's interesting. I think that NFTs become far more interesting when they actually involve utility, where when buying an NFT means that you actually are not just getting a piece of artwork, you're getting something else. You're getting access to a service or access to a community. My company, Unanimous A.I, like as I mentioned, we connect groups of people to amplify intelligence, and we've partnered with another company that's turning that capability into an NFT itself. Okay. Not a piece of artwork, but actually saying, hey, we want to bring together a community of people who are crypto traders, crypto experts amplify their intelligence and forecast assets, forecast just like we forecast gold and oil, forecast Bitcoin and Ethereum, and by amplifying intelligence, and because that's the space, we're doing it as an NFT where people will buy an NFT called the Crypto Swarm AI NFT, and that will give them the right to participate in this, in this collective intelligence, in this super intelligence.
And so you're buying an NFT that actually represents something.
It represents your ability to participate in this collective and then get the amplified intelligence back, get benefits of these of this group. And so I really do believe that NFTs are going in that direction, going towards utility, going towards something that provides a value that makes good use of this decentralized customer base, and so I do think that that's a place where NFTs have value. Now, that's not to say that there aren't NFTs that represent things that outside of art that also aren't questionable. As I mentioned, NFT real estate in virtual worlds, it's representing something that has more, is a little bit more logical than artwork, but in my mind it's less logical because it's assuming that real estate in virtual reality follows the same rules as real estate. The thing about real estate that makes real estate prices go up is scarcity. Right. In a virtual world, you can just keep creating more virtual real estate. The other thing about that makes real estate valuable in the real world is location. If you're in the virtual world, you can have hyperlinks and just jump, from one place to another place. Location means something different, and so a lot of people are buying virtual real estate, thinking, "Oh God, I bought this exclusive piece of land in this great spot," and they're not realizing, well, A, that whole platform could just go away, or B, that idea of a great spot doesn't even mean the same thing if you can connect two locations through a portal to jump from one place to another, and then scarcity doesn't follow the same rules. So it's so risky on a lot of different levels. I think that it's dangerous to invest in virtual real estate, at least at this point in the process. But I do believe that NFTs will be important to the metaverse. They'll be important for assigning ownership rights of assets, and I think they'll be important for giving access to services and creating communities and doing a lot of interesting things.
Yeah, I think if memory serves me right, I think that was the original intent of an NFT, was like a digital rendering of something in the real world. Right.
So it's. I mean, I like to think of an NFT almost like the VIN number on a car. Right. I mean, you can walk out into a parking lot and there could be 3 cars that look identical. Which one's yours? The only thing that really makes one of them yours is that VIN number.
Right.
And the NFT is the ability to assign a VIN number to a piece of digital content, a virtual car in the metaverse, and store it in a decentralized way where anybody could access that record. It's not, there's not some centralized company that, holds a list of these serial numbers. It's stored out there. Anybody can confirm that that's your car.
Right. So shifting back really quickly to AR, you're talking about data being in front of you. When you think about industries or verticals that would benefit the most from AR, where does your mind instantly go? Is it like defense capability? Is it medical? Is it just day-to-day, average person?
So I think it starts out as high-end applications, and it ultimately impacts everyone on day-to-day. And I say that right now in high-end applications, one area that I'm particularly interested in is the medical uses. And I've been following that space very closely. What augmented reality can already do at the research level, and will soon do, in real practice, is give doctors basically X-ray vision, where they can look inside a patient and see trauma, see disease. And that will work because a patient will have a CT scan or an MRI that takes a 3D model of their body, and that will get registered to their actual body, so that if you're wearing the AR glasses, that model will be in their body, so they can basically look and see the as if you could look inside their body. And there are already systems that do this. There are already clinical trials being done where researchers can. The first place it's being looked at is for surgical planning, where you have a group of doctors standing around a patient. They're going to do surgery, but with AR glasses, they can all see into the patient. Where if they're going to remove a gallbladder, where is it in the patient? And what's interesting is, like, right now, what doctors do is they look at that 3D model on a flat screen. So they look at a flat screen, then they look back at the patient, and they look at the flat, and they try to do that mental transformation in their head. Where is that in their body? And AR will allow them to just peer right in. So I think the medical applications are really, really interesting. There's similar applications for engineering, for architecture, for people walking through a construction site and seeing where the cabling is going to go, because you can actually just see it rendered. And so really powerful industrial applications. That said, I do think that it will become something that's accessible to everybody in consumer grade devices, and you get the same benefits. You're walking down the street and you see a tree and you're just glancing at it for a moment, wondering, and you can get, it'll tell you what kind of tree it is and information about it. Or you see a historical site, you get information. So it'll be informational content. There'll be educational content. There'll be artistic content. There'll be promotional content, which is a worry, because it could start to become overwhelming with advertising content. And that's a big danger. I mean, there are these negatives of the metaverse, which is, these immersive environments are really good tools for hammering people with promotional content, and that content won't be just pop-up ads that you see in the real world. They will be experiences, and so we will see virtual product placements in the metaverse, where I'm walking down the street and I see a parked car and I've never seen it before, and I notice it and I keep walking, and I might have thought that was authentic, but somebody might have placed that there. A sponsor might have placed that for me to see that car. It was a targeted product placement. It can get even worse, where maybe I walk past and I see this parked car and there's two people standing out in front of the car, the owner telling somebody how much they love that car, and that too could have been a virtual product placement. Like, that could have been placed there for me to see. And it could be targeted, meaning somebody walking down the street right behind me would have seen something completely different. Right?
Yeah, that makes me leery.
Yeah, no, it's one of the reasons why I personally believe that there really needs to be regulation and policy to protect consumers in virtual worlds and augmented worlds. And I say that because the whole point of virtual reality and augmented reality is to blur the boundaries between what's real and what's generated. And if I can't tell the difference between a promotional experience that was injected into the world and just something that I just happened to come upon, then it goes from advertising to deception. It becomes manipulation. And so my personal feeling, and I push this a lot, is that there needs to be some guardrails in place that protect consumers, that allow consumers, first and foremost, to be able to tell the difference between an authentic experience in the metaverse that might just be some other user having conversation about something, and a promotional experience that was put there for you to observe. And so if somebody puts a virtual product placement or sends a virtual spokesperson, which also will happen in the metaverse, somebody, an AI avatar that will engage you in conversation about a product, or so, if that happens in the metaverse, a virtual product or a virtual person that's promotional should look different or sound different. Like, I should at least be able to know, okay, I saw that new car, it looks cool, but I know it's an advertisement. I know it's promotional, it looks different. Just like if you're watching television and an ad comes up, okay, you know it's an ad, they're they're trying to influence you. You still might be influenced, but at least you can use your defenses. And that's really different than if you're just going about your day and you're seeing things that you think are part of your world, but they actually were placed there for you to see by a paying sponsor that wants you to know about a product, a service, a political idea, a piece of propaganda, a piece of misinformation. It can get very dangerous, but policymakers could at least protect consumers by making it really clear that platforms have to make it distinguishable, visually, audibly distinguishable between targeted promotional content and everything else that's happening in the metaverse that's just organic, serendipitous experiences.
Yeah, I like that because at least, if I'm watching something on YouTube and an ad pops up, I can at least kind of consent to being advertised to, right? Look, there's some advertisements I've wanted to see. Like, hey, I'm glad I bought that product, right?
Right.
But that was like a decision that I was able to make. Man, with that, one of the things that my mind jumps to is I have 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
You think about, I think it was Steve Jobs who wouldn't give his kids an iPad when they were super young because of the addictive nature of it, and multiply that out tenfold with TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram. And I don't know. I mean, I think do you think about that too, like in terms of like policy around protecting, like, especially young children from, because you think TikTok is addictive. Immerse yourself with a pair of glasses, and now where are we, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. The dangers and the ability for the metaverse to be really persuasive tool becomes even more dangerous when we're talking about kids who even have a hard time distinguishing between advertisements and regular content, even when it's clearly different. And so in the metaverse, for immersive advertising, virtual product placements, virtual characters that will engage you in promotional conversation, I really think there should be very strict restrictions, even a ban on immersive advertising for kids. I mean, you could imagine you're a kid in a virtual world, and a giant teddy bear walks up to you and starts talking to you about some product, and you're excited, and you don't realize that that's an AI that's designed to try to get you to want to tell your parents to buy you some product or so. Or, like, the potential for manipulation is really extreme, and especially with kids. And the scary part is that kids are, in some sense, the front end of this, because the most advanced metaverse worlds that exist right now are Roblox for kids and Minecraft for kids. Roblox has 50 million kids in it, and it's it's an interesting environment. It's preparing these kids for their future, in a sense, because their future will involve virtual worlds. Roblox just announced that they're going to start advertising to kids, and that's scary to me, because the advertisements might be immersive in a way that become harder for kids to tell that it's an advertisement. If the advertisement is a character. I mean, back when I was a kid, there were lots of advertisements for kids that would have, Tony the Tiger character. And that's, but if Tony the Tiger was actually a character that was walking down the street with you and engaging you and, befriending you and having a conversation with you, that's a whole different level.
Yeah.
And that's
what, Tony, I do want some Frosted Flakes, actually. Yes. For sure.
So so I'm a proponent of the metaverse, and I have been for over 30 years, but the dangers now are also really important. There's, for people who are interested in those dangers, I get involved with different nonprofit groups and things that really are looking at this. There's an event in December called Metaverse Safety Week that was created by a nonprofit called XRSI, the XR Safety Initiative, and they do really good work, and I'm an advisor to them. And this Metaverse Safety Week is intended to raise awareness for everybody, but especially to policymakers, that, hey, this technology is coming, and it raises new issues that are completely different than we've had to deal with, even in dangerous places like social media and immersive gaming. The metaverse, when we go to fully immersive worlds and augmented worlds, have really new privacy issues, and also, even more importantly, new ways that that advertisers can alter your experiences and to protect, or to give consumers a right to know the difference between an authentic experience and a promotional experience. That's the type of policy that is basic and fundamental and can make a really big difference.
Yeah, no, that's good. So when you're not thinking about AI, AR, VR, what do you spend your time doing, man? What do you enjoy?
I enjoy reading fiction and science fiction, and seeing. I actually am very interested in different people's visions of the future. More recently, I'm really interested in looking at how science fiction authors envision the future, 50 years ago. It's fascinating to me because you can take a trip back in time and see, like, well, what were they thinking the world would be like? And in some cases, they're simultaneously off in two ways at once. Like they're way off that the world is actually way more sophisticated than they thought, and in other ways they're way off in that we're not even close, and it could be on the same page, right? You can see that even just on television science fiction. You look back at old Star Trek, and you see, in some ways they have a tricorder where they can detect your medical your medical conditions with one swipe. Like, we're nowhere close to that. And then you look at their computer interfaces and you say, like, they we're much more sophisticated than,
were you a Trekkie?
I always enjoyed Star Trek and visions. I really enjoy visions of the future, and how how we can kind of anticipate where things are going, and also just really interested in how some things take longer than you expect, and some things happen so much faster.
Right.
I've experienced that myself, because, as I said, back in 1991, 1992, I really did think that VR and AR would happen within a decade, and it's going to take 3 decades from that. But it took longer. It makes sense. And then there are other things that just surprised me how quickly they happen, right? Like, some of the recent advances in AI have really been kind of shocking. The ability now of AI to do generative artwork, like really quality artwork. That advanced so quickly over just a period of just a few years. It's shocking, and it's really shocking to artists. Like, artists right now are worried that freelance artists see AI suddenly as a competitor, and 5 years ago they could never have guessed that would happen.
Yeah, I was playing with an AI art generator the other day. I can't even remember what it was called, but you literally would just type in phrases.
Yep.
And it would generate an image, so you could be like Chicken Man.
Yeah.
Give you like 5 different images of what it thinks that would look like.
Yeah, and there's a number of these systems out there: DALL-E, Midjourney, Crayon, and they're really good. I mean, they are very good at what they do, and it's scary to artists. I mean, there's a lot of artists who are worried that that the freelance artwork that they would normally get to generate something, someone can now type in a phrase and get something that looks good.
Right. Yeah, I hope not. I hope one of my hopes is, like, it's 2022. I'm a big time reader. I love to read. Anytime I'm reading, it's a physical book.
Right. Yep.
I'm well aware of Kindle and Audible. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I like that. And maybe, I don't know. I like to think I don't. My wife always tells me, I'll say something. She's like, well, you're not a unicorn, right? Other people think that way too. So I don't think I'm alone in like, there is part of me that exists in the modern world the way it is, and I'm thankful for many things. I try to adopt things early when I think that they're valuable, but also want to stay grounded to reality. And so, man, I love cracking the spine on a real book. And I hope that as AR and VR develop, we don't lose that, because
Right.
I would rather buy a piece of art. My wife was an art major. I would rather buy a piece of art from an artist, whether we're talking about pottery or a painting, than from a robotically produced,
Right.
3D printed piece of art or an AI generated piece of art, because I think that people matter, man. And that's why I like what your company's doing in terms of AI and people, and not getting rid of people, but helping people.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. The same thing about books is I will only want to read from a physical book.
Yeah,
And partly that's how I grew up. And, I look at my kids who, they, they very often don't even have textbooks, and especially in college. Like
yeah,
a lot of the textbooks are just online. I'm like, I couldn't even, like, I would not like that. Like, I would like a physical textbook. And I actually think that, you grow up that way, and your brain in some sense remembers where in the book things are. Like, oh yeah, like that's at the middle of the
absolutely.
book. Like that's part of like how you remember things. And when it's not a physical book, it's just different. But if you grow up that way, you're maybe more comfortable with it. You're
Right.
fine. But it is. I agree. There's this push for so much technology. Um, there also should be some pushback of recognizing and respecting human artists and human content creators and human craftsmen,
Yeah.
because those things are being challenged. I mean, even doctors are concerned about AI. My company, Unanimous, we had a big project with Stanford Medical School, taking groups of radiologists and having them come together in swarm to make diagnoses. And one of the motivations for us doing that big project was radiologists are scared that AI is just going to replace their whole profession because you can train an AI on thousands and thousands of X-rays and MRI, and they could learn to diagnose things. What we did with Stanford was we showed that we could take a small group of radiologists, 4 or 5, put them into bring them into swarm and have an X-ray pop up, and they could increase their accuracy significantly better than a pure AI system. And so again, it was a way to kind of elevate humans so that we're less, we could less likely to be replaced by machines. But there's a lot of professions out there, from radiologists who go to medical school for almost a decade to become a radiologist, who are now worried that AI can replace them, to artists who never thought that art, creativity would get replaced. And these AI systems, they're actually not creative and they're actually not artistic, but they're trained on human art. They're trained on millions of human art, and so they're just really good at replicating human art. And so it's almost unfair, right? Like the AI isn't really an artist, and yet it's replacing artists by using this massive content. So there's lots of interesting issues coming up, ethical issues, economic issues, and it's some of these spaces like AI, it's changing very fast.
Well, okay, so I feel like I could keep this going forever because I still have more questions for you. But I said we would stick to a half hour. We're fast approaching an hour. We talked about physical books. We both seem to like reading. If you were going to recommend a book to someone who is just like, I want to understand, okay, like where is AR, VR going? Like where are we headed technically? What would you recommend?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I don't have a book to point to in AR and VR. I feel like most of the books that are written are either really old, or the new ones are really more marketing hype about the metaverse. I do think I do think there's a lot to draw from science fiction in terms of where things are headed and the potential of AI and virtual worlds. But
so what would you recommend on that front? You got a sci-fi recommendation?
That's a good question. So I mean, so a book that I read that's science fiction that just recently that like really kind of floored me, and this goes to one of the other issues that's happening in our world related to climate change and other things. There's a book that I think it's 10 or 15 years old called Ishmael, and it's actually about an ape that can talk to people. And it was like, I just recently read it and it was so fascinating about, it's basically like humanity talking, like having a conversation with the natural world represented through this ape. And it was a really fascinating book. And they actually, it became a series of books, but it's rare to come across a book that's just really different and comes at these issues in a really different way. And so that's of all the books I've read recently, that one was I thought really well done. And
Okay, that's awesome, man. I always love to end with a book recommendation. Is that by Daniel Quinn, or have I found the wrong one? Okay,
no, that's the right one. It's Daniel Quinn.
Perfect.
And
Perfect.
Yeah, really interesting book.
Very cool. Well, Louis, I'll let you go. I'm sorry I would keep this going, but I have our conference room here. I'm in our national office, and there's a meeting here at 1:00. It is now 1:01.
Okay,
so are literally threatening to bust in the door. So,
no problem.
Yeah, Louis, I've enjoyed it, man. I'll talk to you soon, and we'll let you know as soon as we release this. Okay.
Okay, great.
All right. Hey, be well, man.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, there's my start straight.
Yeah.
Live long and prosper, my friend.
That's right.
Next day.